upgraded in any way. Odyssey was holding her right shoulder.
The Indiana Fever finally delivered a playoff victory that their long-suffering fans had craved for years. Yet, in a sequence of events that has become disturbingly characteristic of the WNBA, this moment of triumph was not merely overshadowed but completely hijacked by a needless and infuriating fiasco. The narrative that should have been dominated by Lexi Hull's spectacular game-winning steal or the unwavering heroics of Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston was instead contorted into a bizarre and telling confrontation between a sideline Sophie Cunningham and a security guard employed by the league. Sophie, conspicuously immobilized by a bulky leg brace and in no physical state to be considered a threat, was not charging the court or looking for trouble. She was simply existing in the shared space of her team's victory.
Oh, Sophie, you're like that? Yeah, Chloe, she's like that. She's like that. She ain't moving. And then she puts her hands on the hip. Let me talk to your manager. Oh, shit. All right, Sophie, say no more. Say no more. Now, when your teammate gets injured, you're allowed to hop on the court and just to see if your teammate's doing good. So, injured, healthy. So, Chloe, Sophie, they had every right to be on the court over here.
An official, however, seemingly decided to appoint himself the arbiter of sideline decorum, aggressively confronting Sophie as if she were a belligerent fan who had just breached the court during a melee. This single unwarranted interaction has ignited a firestorm of questions, with the most pressing being, was this an isolated, clueless overreaction from one overzealous functionary, or was it, as a growing number of observers suspect, another piece in a larger, more troubling mosaic of the WNBA's pattern of targeting and singling out players who refuse to conform to its preferred narratives?
Why in the F is that security guard all up on Sophie Cunningham? And look, I think there is a reason she got up in Sophie's face. And I don't think there was any need to sort of bow up to Sophie like that. I don't think, and to Sophie's credit, she did not back down at all.
When examining the broader history, it becomes exceedingly difficult to dismiss this as a random occurrence. Sophie Cunningham was, it appears to many, deliberately singled out. Her immediate reaction, a masterclass in calm defiance, communicated everything. She would not be intimidated by someone she seemingly viewed as a glorified hall monitor. The entire context made the security guard's actions all the more baffling. The Fever, a team decimated by injuries and missing key figures from their rotation, including Caitlin Clark for stretches, Ari McDonald, Sydney Colson, Chloe Bibby, Damaris Dantas, and of course, Cunningham herself, had managed to secure a dramatic, odds-defying win. The atmosphere was electric. Fans were euphoric, the team was celebrating a hard-earned victory, and the energy was one of pure postseason joy. But that celebration was jarringly interrupted by the surreal spectacle of Sophie, in her brace, being aggressively accosted by league security. There was no scuffle, no violation, no precipitating event. Yet, in an instant, she was treated like a threat.
So Odyssey Sims goes down hard, and Sophie Cunningham, Caitlin Clark, Chloe Bibby are waiting for her at half court, and the cop tries to get Sophie Cunningham to move. Sophie Cunningham was like, "You're not going to get me to move. I'm waiting for Odyssey." And you could see during the review, look at Sophie Cunningham clapping, not moving, waiting for her teammate. That's the Fever for you.
Consider the damning optics of the situation. Sophie Cunningham, visibly and significantly injured, incapable of even a brisk walk, let alone a sprint, was being physically leaned on and verbally challenged by a security guard who appeared resolutely determined to escalate a non-existent issue. The cameras captured the entire unflattering exchange with perfect clarity, Sophie's expression transitioning from initial puzzlement to clear annoyance, and finally, to the unmistakable, withering glare that has become her signature. It was the nonverbal equivalent of saying, "Really? This is what you're choosing to do right now?" And frankly, she had every justification for that sentiment.
Folks, I didn't realize how much fun I would have watching these people break down. It's a meltdown. It's a meltdown on Twitter today. It's embarrassing to a certain extent. Not for me, for them. And then we got the Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever getting booed as they're getting off their court.
The moment detonated across social media almost instantly. Within minutes, clips of Sophie's intense stare-down were circulating everywhere, and the collective reaction was one of unadulterated outrage. The anger wasn't directed at Sophie for any perceived overreaction, but at the sheer, blatant senselessness of the entire confrontation. Fans could see with their own eyes that this was not an act of maintaining order, it was an act of harassment. And it feeds directly into the persistent and frustrating narrative that has shadowed Sophie throughout her career. She is perpetually cast as the villain.
Check this out right here. Yeah, you see this guy right here? Right in this Gentile area? You see this guy? The ref asked this dude to step out here. All right? Now, Cheryl Swoops wants this referee fired. She wants him fired. Look, he felt something. He felt something was amiss. Of course, Cheryl Swoops.
Why? The answer seems to be that Sophie Cunningham does not adhere to the WNBA's implicit script. She is unapologetically outspoken. She actively challenges narratives she disagrees with. She exudes a confidence that some find abrasive and refuses to diminish herself to make others more comfortable. For this, she has been treated differently by rival fan bases, by certain media outlets, and now it seems by the league's own contracted staff. This is the same Sophie Cunningham, whose name regularly trends on Twitter, whose highlight clips generate massive engagement, and whose fan base is among the most passionate in all of women's basketball. By any logical metric, she is good for business. Yet, instead of embracing her as a compelling and marketable personality, the WNBA appears intent on framing her as a problem.
They hate Sophie Cunningham because she's white, she's beautiful, all these things, right? Let's keep it real. Let's keep it 100, as they say. Sophie Cunningham is the most beautiful woman in this league. All right, she's the hottest woman in this league, and they're mad they can't be her.
The response from fans was swift and furious. Comments poured in across every social media platform. Many stated unequivocally that Sophie is subjected to this kind of treatment because she does not fit the league's preferred corporate image. Others pointed to the glaring racial and cultural double standards at play. The argument was repeatedly made had Angel Reese or Paige Bueckers been in Sophie's position. The exact same behavior would have been framed as passion or fiery leadership. But for Sophie Cunningham, standing still in a leg brace, it was suddenly a disciplinary issue. The fans were not buying the league's implicit narrative, and they made their displeasure known. Hashtags like #FreeSophie and #WhattyNBA exposed gained significant traction within hours.
I completely underestimated the feelings that I would have watching all of the Indiana Fever haters crash out. All of the Caitlin Clark haters, all of the Sophie Cunningham haters, anything to do with the Indiana Fever, the people that are just so quick to hop on Twitter and say something negative, to hop on media and say something negative, to take credit away. I underestimated how good it feels watching these people crumble.
What makes the situation even more compelling is that Sophie herself did nothing to escalate the encounter. She stood her ground. Yes, she did not back down or cower, but she did not raise her voice, make a scene, or lose her composure. She simply held her space, delivered her glare, and refused to be bullied. In doing so, she demonstrated a level of professionalism that far exceeded that of the security guard who initiated the confrontation in the first place. This is precisely why the clip went viral. It wasn't drama that Sophie caused. It was drama the league created and inflicted upon her.
Poor Sophie. She got the contraption on. She looks great in a ball cap. Let's just keep it real. We're keeping it 100 here, as the kids say. And here we go. Right here, she's at mid-court. And then Paula Blart, mall cop, what are you doing? Well, I mean, what you doing? She got a leg brace on, for crying out loud. You come out here trying to be Brody and trying to do something, knowing damn good well. Look at this police officer sauntering up.
This incident is not an island. It is part of an archipelago of questionable league actions. One can easily connect the dots to previous controversies. Remember when referees summoned security during a heated moment with Dejonai Carrington, the league swiftly moved to manage the narrative. The Players Association rallied in her defense, and the incident was widely framed as an example of unfair treatment. So the question echoes, why the profound radio silence from the league when a similar, if not more egregious situation unfolded with Sophie? Why is it left to the fans alone to call out the glaring double standard while the league's leadership remains conspicuously mute?
It was one of those games. It was such a good W game. Like it was physical. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of great plays. But I just knew deep down in my gut that we were going to win. Like somehow we were going to win. And like, I think there was like a minute or like 40, I don't even know, like around 40 seconds left. And they left our all-star player wide open under the hoop for the go-ahead layup. And then Lexi Hall had a freaking badass steal and like it was over. But
this is about more than a single overzealous official. It's about the WNBA's persistent and seemingly unresolved problem with handling players who don't fit neatly into their marketing-approved molds. Caitlin Clark has been living this reality since her debut, enduring a barrage of hacks, shoves, and targeted physicality, while referees often seem to swallow their whistles and the league offers little more than a collective shrug. Sophie, in parallel, has been saddled with the villain label for years. When you intertwine these two storylines, a disturbing trend emerges. The WNBA seems incapable of properly managing, protecting, or celebrating stars who possess unconventional or challenging personalities. Instead of embracing them as assets, the league appears to marginalize them.
Kathy Engelbert, we need an investigation. Call the FBI. Call the local police department. We need an investigation as to who was raining down those boos on the Indiana Fever. They're all racist. Or, hear me out here, or this is sports and that's expected. Notice how the Indiana Fever players, oh, they didn't cry. Oh my God. Notice how they didn't do that.
The irony is almost too much to bear. Both Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham are precisely the kinds of authentic, engaging, and marketable athletes that the league should be building its future around. Yet, they are consistently let down by officiating and now even by sideline staff. When fans witness this pattern, their frustration grows not just with the individual moment, but with the entire league apparatus.
The league is so mad that we won because we're literally not supposed to be here at all. And that just like kind of fuels our fire even more. But it was just like so fun. It was one of those games that, first of all, I was sweating my ass off because I was so nervous and like, I don't really get anxious about stuff. I was so anxious. Like I could not sit still. I was legit. I felt like I played with how much I was sweating. And so
the fallout was as immediate as it was predictable. Fans flooded comment sections, excoriating the WNBA for allowing Sophie to be embarrassed during what should have been a moment of collective joy. Many pointed out the hypocrisy of a league that once threatened to investigate its own fans for booing Angel Reese, yet brushes aside flagrant fouls against Caitlin Clark as just part of the game. The pattern is undeniable: selective enforcement, selective outrage, and selective protection. With each new instance, the league's credibility erodes further. And let's be perfectly clear, this isn't just a matter of bad optics. It is fundamentally bad business. The WNBA professes a desire for growth, respect, and mainstream relevance. None of those goals are achievable when your most triumphant moments are consistently upstaged by viral clips of your players being harassed by your own personnel. What fans want is to see the sport they love played, celebrated, and respected, not to see their favorite stars silenced, sidelined, or accosted.
And I think we all know that if there's one thing that male sports fans want to see in their spaces and on their screens, it's more of me.
This is where the story truly metastasizes. The more fans discussed the confrontation, the deeper they began to dig, piecing together the broader context of repeated double standards, mistreatment, and the systemic failure to protect players like Clark and Sophie. Suddenly, this viral clip was no longer just a clip, it became a comprehensive case study in everything that fans find wrong with the WNBA's current leadership, officiating, and overarching priorities. Sophie Cunningham isn't just another player in sweats. She is a lightning rod because she refuses to conform. She doesn't bow to league-approved storylines, doesn't soften her personality for media comfort, and certainly doesn't play the role of the smiling, compliant mascot. She isn't Paige Bueckers, who some see as the WNBA's chosen successor to the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. She isn't Angel Reese, the league's designated controversy machine. Sophie is an entity they cannot neatly categorize, and for that, she has been a target.
Indiana Fever are heading to the semifinals. Let's see, driving to the foul line and the paint, lays it in. Sims crossover left to right, gets into the paint, layup, good. Inside, Boston.
The supreme irony is that her very defiance has fueled her popularity. Fans are drawn to her because she is perceived as real, unfiltered, and willing to voice the thoughts others are too timid to express. This is exactly the kind of raw energy a league desperate for mainstream attention should be harnessing, but instead of embracing her as a unique draw, the WNBA seems determined to mitigate her influence. Look at the league's official marketing. How often is Sophie Cunningham featured front and center? Almost never. Yet her name trends constantly. Her highlights accumulate millions of views, and her interviews are dissected more than those of players the league promotes twice as aggressively. When controversies arise, the disparate treatment is stark. If Sophie is in a dust-up, she is branded the aggressor. If another more favored player does the same, it's lauded as swagger and passion. The favoritism is insultingly obvious to anyone paying attention. So when a leg-braced Sophie was accosted by a security guard for the crime of caring about her teammates, that hypocrisy reached a new nadir. There was no logical explanation, save for the uncomfortable one, that fans are now openly discussing. Sophie Cunningham is being systematically singled out. The damage extends far beyond Sophie herself. The casual fans, many of whom were drawn into the WNBA's orbit by the magnetic star power of Caitlin Clark, are watching these events unfold. These are the newcomers who, instead of being treated to a compelling story of an underdog team's gritty playoff win, were instead served a bizarre drama of Sophie versus the security guard. When outsiders see a professional league more focused on manufactured drama and internal conflicts than on the sport itself, they don't walk away impressed. They walk away with the lethal perception that the WNBA is fundamentally unserious. Online, fans unleashed their fury with little restraint. Comment sections became forums for blistering attacks on Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, blasting her for presiding over what many called the most embarrassing league in professional sports. Calls for her resignation grew louder, with accusations that she has allowed the WNBA to devolve into a circus act. When your fan base is more invested in your controversies than your competition, that isn't growth. It is a collapse masquerading as buzz. Throughout this entire ordeal, Sophie handled herself with more grace than the league that employs her. She didn't have a meltdown, she didn't feed the drama, and she didn't give her detractors any ammunition. She stood firm, refused to retreat, and let her body language eloquently convey her defiance. The fans saw this and responded by flooding her social media with messages of support, anointing her the hero of the night. Once again, it was demonstrated that every attempt by the league to diminish Sophie only serves to galvanize and strengthen her base. Her actual response came later, and in classic Cunningham fashion, it was laced with subtle humor, a jab that reminded everyone she remains in control of her own narrative. The league seems to operate under the delusion that targeting Sophie will weaken her, but the opposite is true. Every attempt only increases her popularity. Fans invariably gravitate toward an underdog who refuses to be silenced, and Sophie Cunningham embodies that archetype perfectly. Of course, this is not a standalone issue. It is a symptom of the WNBA's disturbing track record of failing to adequately protect and promote the very players who are the engines of its success. Look at the relentless physical abuse Caitlin Clark has endured. Look at how Lexi Hull's playoff heroics were barely a footnote in the league's own media coverage, even as fans celebrated her clutch performance. And now, Sophie is humiliated by league security in the middle of a team celebration. This is not a series of coincidences. It is a clear and undeniable pattern. The WNBA wants to project a narrative of collective growth, of a league rising together. But the reality appears to be far uglier. A leadership that picks its favorites and actively pushes others to the margins. This kind of selective promotion isn't just unfair, it's a catastrophic business strategy. You cannot demand unwavering loyalty from a fan base while simultaneously disrespecting the players they admire. Eventually, those fans will simply stop showing up, and no television contract or corporate sponsorship can mend that broken trust. That is why the Fever's playoff run should have been an unmitigated triumph. Even without Caitlin Clark for parts of their journey, even with half their roster nursing injuries, they found a way to win. That was the headline. That was the story. Instead, it was completely buried under the absurdity of a rent-a-cop barking at Sophie Cunningham. The league had a golden opportunity to highlight Lexi Hull's defensive genius, Aaliyah Boston's steady hand, Kelsey Mitchell's veteran leadership, and the sheer resilience of a depleted roster. Instead, the enduring image is one of mall cop antics. That isn't just embarrassing, it is professional malpractice. And at the epicenter of this self-inflicted wound sits Sophie Cunningham, whose only transgression was passionately caring about her team's success. That one single scene told fans everything they needed to know about how the WNBA treats players who dare to defy its carefully constructed mold. The backlash is not subsiding, it is intensifying. Every new clip, every tweet, every meme stokes the flames. Fans are now casting Sophie as the underdog hero, standing up to a league seemingly intent on sidelining her. The league can, and likely will, try to spin this. It can issue vapid PR statements. It can attempt to downplay the significance of the moment, but it is too late. Public opinion has already rendered its verdict. Sophie was wronged, and the league once again looks utterly ridiculous. This incident matters so profoundly because yet again, the story is not about the basketball. It is about the WNBA's chronic, baffling inability to get out of its own way.